Today I'm going to talk to you about how we choose our replacement ewe lambs. We do it the old-fashioned way by hand. So I have binders on all of our sheep, whether they're registered or commercial, Dorset or Suffolk. They all have their own history written up, and I keep track of it very carefully. And our sheep are born in groups, so I can monitor groups and see how they're doing visually. Since we're doing purebred stock and we have a terminal breed here, the Suffolk, we are most concerned with correct conformation, which is always number one. And number two would be how quickly they grow. So as you can see, this is our replacement flock and some that we've sold to other people that they're about to pick up. And one thing you can see across this group is they're fairly consistent in height, width, and length. I have writing on the back of their backs, which will indicate to me who the father is, so I can see right off the bat how a ram is doing. I also have little dots on their backs, which tell me what it was born as. So that one there has a single dot, so it's a single. We got a single, a triplet, a twin, a twin, a twin, a twin. This one's a triplet. So whether they're a triplet or a single, they're all pretty consistent. We want consistency in our flock. It looks nice. You can judge them easily. Now for picking a sheep, it doesn't matter what breed you have. They have to be good conformation if you want to produce good lambs. And I've had a lot of commercial people say to me, what conformation doesn't matter too much to me because I'm just sending the lambs out for market anyway. But I would like to dispute that, because if you are retaining any sheep for yourself as replacements, or even if they are going to market, a sheep with better conformation is going to always produce better lambs. They are going to have more longevity in your flock, because if you're built correctly, you're less likely to fall apart with the pressures of lambing year after year, in some cases back to back in the accelerated lambing things. You want a sheep that has strong conformation so that she can handle the rigors of working, and as a result she will also produce heavier, healthier, better confirmed lambs as well. And when you've got all that going for you, you are going to make more money on a better sheep. So everyone seems to know what a good sheep is. They've got to have a straight back, they've got to have good legs, they've got to have a good bite, they got to be wide, they got to be long. So here's a ewe that came up to me here. I find a lot of people can tell you what a sheep should have, but to pick it out in real life, there seems to be a little disconnect. So when people come to buy sheep from us, I always give them a little tip, because a lot of people will say they don't know what they're looking for. So our little theory is that a sheep should be built like a coffee table. And by that I mean, here's Cammy here and here's this one. So they're in long grass, which makes it harder to see. But a coffee table is long and it's wide equally on the front and the back. So, like with these two sheep, when you look at them, you can see her front shoulders are as wide as her hips. This is going to give her more stability, and it means she's wider. So she's got wider loin, wider hips for delivering babies. People say, why do you need a wide shoulder? It all goes hand in hand with making a correct sheep. So if you're equally wide on both ends like this, chances are very high that your legs are also going to be correctly spaced. And by correctly spaced, I mean no knock knees, no pigeon toes. So big wide hips are a no-brainer. She's got to deliver babies. Wide hips and wide placement between the back legs. As you can see with all those girls there, there's space there, and it should flow right through to the front. But that also will help their udder development, because if you have a wide space between the back legs, she can deliver lambs easier because she has wider hips. Instead of, if her legs are close together, the udder will tend to form narrow and long. So you'll tend to have udder problems. You know, those big bags that hang low are stretched out, hard for lambs to reach. Whereas if she's got wide leg placement at the back, then the udder tends to fill in that space and becomes a wider, tighter udder, which makes it much easier for lambs to nurse, and the bags will last longer because they're not, you know, they don't have the stress of that weight pulling them down. So that's why you want good leg placement, and of course they have to walk and graze. Even if they're in confinement, they still are walking around a lot. And if they're comfortable and eating and moving correctly, then you're going to have correct muscle development and growth and all the associated benefits of exercise. Okay, the sheep came in the barn, so it's a little easier to see them now. So here's an example of one of the ewe lambs. What we like about her would be that she has a straight back. So a straight back is pretty obvious. All these sheep here have straight backs. The reason you want a straight back instead of maybe a dip behind the shoulders, where it's most common to have a dip, is that again, if they can't hold themselves in a good posture when they're just open lambs, when they have lambs and are carrying a baby or two or three, the pressures on their back with all that weight and the afterbirth and all that, it's gonna pull on those backs even more, and they are gonna fall apart very quickly. You're not gonna get much longevity out of a sheep with a poor back. So yeah, it's about profitability, so you want to stay away from a bad back. Now there's a different sheep when I'm talking about wide hips and the width between the back legs. You can see that there's a good space there. All of these sheep have it, even if they got a shitty bum. Another thing you want to see in your sheep is depth. So that's the width from their back to their belly. So I'm going to go back to that sheep because she shows it very nicely. So she's got the wide hips, good space between her back legs. And you see that from her shoulder, oh, we'll go to that one. From the shoulder to the armpit, it's very wide. and it's basically even from front to back. A lot of sheep behind the armpits, it will go up, so they have less depth of rib, less capacity. So why you want that really deep body like that is because that's where all her organs are. So again, if you've got a good room for your heart and your lungs and for eating and stuff, again, you're gonna have a healthier sheep. It's so when you put that depth times width times length, because you can see she's long, I like to have their from their shoulders to their rump, I believe, should be longer than their legs. We choose for that, and we have long sheep. So when you have those three things, depth, length, and width, you have what is considered to be a high capacity sheep. High capacity sheep are optimum breeders. They can eat a massive amount of food, which means they can grow faster. They have room to have multiple lambs without getting tangled up because they have that body mass. So that if you had a short-bodied ewe, then if you had multiple lambs, they're kind of like in a ball, like a cluster. And when they're trying to deliver that cluster, if they can't stretch out and move around and get into position, the birthing position, that's when you're going to be having your pulls and stuff happening. So the longer the better, not only for money and profitability, but for ease in lambing and making your life easier altogether, because you won't be having as many pulls and tangles. So when the sheep is walking around in a show, you'll see them leading the sheep around, and the judge will ask them to stop, and everybody will stop, and the judge is going to look at how their feet are positioned. And you'll see a lot of people kicking the back legs apart and lifting up the legs and placing them in the correct spot, which shows the sheep off to its best, in its best light. But in reality, when your sheep stops, it should be in the correct position without any help at all. So this ewe here, as you can see, her front legs come straight down from her shoulders in a line. She's got a slight hook on her back leg by her, I guess you'd call it her elbows. Sometimes that little hook is missing, which would be called post-legged. Sometimes it goes a little too under the sheep, which would be sickle-legged. So you kind of want a happy medium. And then when you look at the legs from the front, can you stop there, sweetheart? See, she stopped on her own, and you can see there's light between her legs. Like so many sheep, the legs are almost touching or touching at the front. And equally, when she goes by, her back end should be the same width. The space should go right across. Again, that coffee table effect. Sheep shouldn't be built like a chair, which would be short and squat. It should be a coffee table. What else do we need to talk about? Oh, behind the shoulders. If they have a weak front end, again, you can see on this ewe, she's even from the front to the back in width, but you will find a lot of sheep actually, The front will be narrower, and people will say good birthing. But it may be better birthing, but a good ewe should birth a good lamb. It shouldn't need to have a poor ram with a narrow shoulder for it to be able to give birth. You want them to produce the best they can do, and you also want to improve. So you want your sheep to be able to take any type of ram that you put at her. She should be developed correctly so that she can do that. It should never have to be a worry. And I guess we should talk about their pasterns too. They should be up on their little tippy toes. Some of the faster growing sheep, which Suffolks are, some of the rams especially, they're growing so fast at over a pound a day that oftentimes they will be weak on their pasterns because their bone growth hasn't kept up with their muscle growth. So the weight is pushing on those legs, and often they will be a little down on their pasterns. I find that especially with our British style ones. Max, come here. So they'll be down a little bit. It's something you want to look at because, again, if it has it as a lamb, it's usually only going to get worse as they mature and put on those hundreds of pounds. And there's Cammie. She's an example of a really well built ewe. Max, come here. Her front legs are down straight below her shoulders. Her back leg has a slight little hook on it, but it's again coming down from her hips. It's not, the legs aren't placed under her. They're kind of in line with her hip bones. She's holding one leg back, but she's straight backed. She's deep. No little dip under her armpits. Nice and straight all the way through. And that's thick. Like that's about 1.5 feet thick on a January lamb. As I go around her, you can see the placement there, the width between those back legs. As I go up to her, you can see that her rump is the same width as her chest. And that's what you're looking for. Now, when you have purebred stock, like some of these Suffolks are, then you're going to have to start nitpicking on breed characteristics. With Suffolks, it would be the black head with that line where the hair on the head stops and the wool starts. It's nice to see that. Suffolks, it's about the ears. Those ears, when you pull them down, should reach the corner of their mouths. And her ears, you can see, obviously would do that. They also have a little hook, a little flip at the end of the ears. That's a Suffolk trait that you'd be looking for. You want to avoid any black wool in their body. Now, as lambs, they can be born speckled, black, various shades. Even this one, it looks like she had spots as a lamb. But if I don't know if she'll let me. She's a triplet here. If I parted that, are you going to let me see? Well, she's probably not going to let me. But I have parted all these sheep, and they're white underneath. So once they're shorn off, they'll be properly white. And then again, the black legs and the white bodies. And every breed will have its characteristics, and if you're in breeding stock, then you should be selecting, and you should know what your breed is supposed to look for and try to keep true to the breed standards. The breed standards in countries are different. So some sheep are harder to type than others. I find Dorsets are extremely hard to type because if you look at the UK, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, to me they all look totally different. So what we always say is stick to the type you like and breed for that type so that you have a consistent flock. We like that. It's just an aesthetic thing. Over there are the rams, and again, as you can see, there's a ram, good wide chest on them. You want that wide from front to back. All these guys up on their tippy toes. Now we haven't sorted through the rams, so I can probably go in here and show you a ram that's no good. Okay, here's an example of a sheep I don't like if he stays there. He's got a red mark on him because I don't want to keep him. So his body is short. Like if I put his legs on his back, they'd be pretty well the same length as the back. Behind his shoulders there, you can see it's an arch. That's a dippy back. It's a weak back. His front pasterns, you can see his front feet. They look like they're bending instead of being straight up and down. So really weak on his front pasterns. Weak on his chest too. His back legs are slightly under him, going towards his belly, which would be too sickle-legged. You want at the elbow there, you want it to go straight down. His curves forward, so that's a fault. He has terrible legs, terrible back. He has great width on the rump, and I'm sure if he was on numbers, he would score quite high for growth. A real fast grower. But even if he was 99, 99, 99, 99, that's a cull sheep. You should never keep an animal based on numbers if it doesn't match in conformation. Oh, sorry, buddy, because you see he's a massive sheep, and some people would say, yeah, and he fell down, and now his legs look well positioned because he fell right. But that's why it's always watching and looking. He's a very pretty sheep. But we just call this a sheep that's falling apart. And he's a beautiful sheep, fast grower, lots of muscle. But to me, I would not use that. I would not sell it. And on rams, again, you're going to be looking at testicles too. You want good sized testicles, even. Not too long, not too short. This guy's got a good pair if he would sit still. There. That guy at the feeder over there is pretty good too. Takes a lot of eggs to make an omelet. And we're extremely fussy with our rams, but I do think, like this guy, he's a grade. I think he's a beautiful ram. This guy back here looks really nice too. Well, I'll see how that turned out, and maybe we'll use Gladiator standing still to give another demonstration of conformation in an adult, because one thing about a lamb is you pick them, but by the time they're a year, you might go through them again and find they've fallen apart in some area, and you'll move them on, or you might find one that wasn't quite as good as you thought, that has just flourished and come on in the first year. So it's always checking how they develop and monitoring your flock, so that you're always ending up with the best you can get, and the best you can get will always pay off in the long run in quality lambs, heavier lambs getting to market quicker, getting you more money. Okay, thank you. Bye.